Hello people, Scotty.
I'm no communist, I'll tell you that right now. I believe a man should own his own house and car and cow. I like this private ownership, I want to be left alone. Let the government run its business and let me run my own.
Came across a fantastic video the other day by Paul Joseph Watson.
This past weekend, hundreds of thousands of people utilised one of capitalism's greatest achievements, the smartphone, to send the hashtag #ResistCapitalism trending worldwide on Twitter.
It reminds me of a YouTuber called Jason Unruh. The hilarity is his hypocrisy to write his own books, have them then published, and then sell the books.
Maelstrom News fans, I would like to announce a brand new book that I have on sale right now called Utopian Capitalism.
This next bit is just absolutely fantastic.
Here's a sample of their idiocy.
The bourgeois and their racist, sexist capitalism must be purged. Cis white males will be the first against the wall. Hashtag resist capitalism. We have enough tech innovation and resources for everyone globally to work 4 hours a week and pursue life, art, hobbies. Hashtag resist capitalism. Your employer is stealing from you every minute you're on the job. Hashtag resist capitalism.
Dear mom's basement dwelling communists, if you actually did resist capitalism with any degree of success, the following would not exist. Twitter, the iPhone you're tweeting hashtag resist capitalism from, the internet. Seriously, resist capitalism is what trends on Twitter when 13-year-old One Direction fans try to engage in politics.
Okay, so perhaps he was being very harsh towards, 13-year-old One Direction fans, but it is quite funny because it tends to be these type of people. Now here's the truth of it, people.
Here's the truth about capitalism. It's the single greatest force in history to alleviate suffering, bring billions of people out of poverty, and create healthier, more prosperous societies and higher living standards for all. Socialists don't even know what capitalism is.
This is just sadly the truth. People do not understand capitalism. People think capitalism is basically corporatism. If you don't understand corporatism, I've done a video on it before, but it's essentially the merger between state and corporations where, the government will act on their behalf. Basically, the politicians get paid by these big corporations, and the big corporations and the government are in bed together and they're doing each other favours, and basically the big corporations gain competitive advantages, etc. It's a special interest system. That's essentially what it is. So in other words, for example, if big corporations make losses, then of course it's the taxpayers of society who are forced to basically bail them out. He did touch upon the issue on corporatism.
They confuse capitalism with corporatism. Corporatism is the opposite of free market capitalism because it depends on collusion between well-connected large corporations and the state. Socialists constantly call for government to impose more regulations on big corporations. But big corporations actually lobby for more government regulation because they can afford the costs. Small and medium-sized companies can't afford the costs, so they go out of business. Government regulation helps big corporations strangle smaller competitors. Corporatism also ensures that big corporations get waivers from corrupt governments, so they're immune from many of those regulations anyway. Capitalism is about the free exchange of goods and services. A competitive market creates quality because businesses fail if they don't please the consumer. Corporatism is about creating artificial monopolies that drive up prices and punish the consumer. Capitalism isn't the problem. Corporatism is the problem.
But I wouldn't say that we have capitalism today, not as a system. We do have elements of capitalism remaining. For example, we do have things like trade. We do have, a certain part of the private sector. But the problem is we don't have a capitalist system. So when we talk about capitalism, basically what you're talking about is the voluntary exchange in the marketplace. This is not what corporatism is about. Corporatism is basically where they're given favours through government, as I say. And basically capitalism is really all about you being successful yourself. If you run at losses and your company is not successful, you go into liquidation, you pay for your own losses. They don't realise that capitalism is not corporatism, and it is not the early stages of corporatism. Never in recorded history has monopolies stemmed because of a free market, because of the free market. Every instance where we have seen a monopoly form, in every instance it stemmed from states' intervention in one way or another. And we know that history hasn't been black and white. I mean, for goodness sake, that isn't history. We know that history hasn't been black and white. Nothing's ever been, purely 100% one thing and 100% another. We understand that. It is important, however, to note that when we look at, for example, and I had this debate recently, and I'm going to do a separate video on Standard Oil, but Standard Oil never held a monopoly, and that was the best example they could throw at us. Standard Oil had competition on their back, and that was the reason why they kept on, driving down their costs. And you look at the De Beers Group, they gained a near perfect monopoly, but that was because of states' intervention through nationalisation. So it's this thing where people are obsessed with trying to blame the free market, religiously trying to do so, yet here's the funny thing. You see, the big part of the problem is, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes down to the whole issue with regards to corporatism, people grossly misunderstand it. What people think is they think that corporatism is caused by a lack of government regulations. A very, very big mistake. Just like, Paul Joseph Watson had explained.
Socialists constantly call for government to impose more regulations on big corporations. But big corporations actually lobby for more government regulation.
It's all about strong government regulation, and that is essentially what corporatism is about. Corporatism favours the big authoritarian centralised government. The big corporations pay off the politicians for more regulations because the heavier your government regulations become, the thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of government regulations, it becomes overcomplicated. It's not simplified. In other words, for small business owners, it would be far simpler to read through a limited small government regulations simply because the fact that it's simplified. Anyone can read it. However, if you've got thousands and thousands of pages of government regulations and it's this heavy government regulation, and then you have the high costs that come with it, essentially what you're faced with is the smaller businesses cannot afford the costs of these, heavy government regulations. They can't afford to pay people to find loopholes in the regulations, whereas the big corporations can afford. So the big corporations are basically paying off people to find loopholes in the government regulations and is gaining that competitive advantage. This is the very reason why when people think the answer to solving the problem is getting government to regulate, they are subconsciously supporting corporatism. They don't understand it. And the best way to look at it, and this, I'm sorry to do this, but the best way to look at this is more or less like a dog that's chasing its own tail round and round and round and round in circles. Why? Why are they like dogs that chase their tail round and round in circles? Simple, because they say they oppose corporatism, but what they're essentially doing is supporting the very stuff that basically gives power to the corporatist system. You cannot have a mixed economy without corporatism. It just could not exist.
So let me start by saying that there is no such thing as crony capitalism. There's no such thing as something capitalism. There's capitalism. And capitalism is about free markets. It's about the separation of state, of government, from economics, from any involvement in business and in the marketplace. And therefore, there's no something capitalism. There's capitalism. So, yeah, there's cronyism, crony socialism maybe, or let's just call it cronyism. Let's just call it, this is government involvement in the economy. This is the inevitable consequence of the mixed economy. So let's talk about that. This is inevitable. You can't exist in this kind of economy, in this kind of world, without there being cronyism. The reason is that that's how we've set up our economic. That's the essence of a mixed economy. So what is a mixed economy? Mixed economy is this mixture of some freedom in some industries, in some realms, in some part of the business world, and lots of controls, lots of regulations, lots of redistribution of wealth, taxes, but not even just simple taxes, but complex taxes that incentivize some behavior and penalize other behavior, that try to engage in social policy or trade policy, or favoring manufacturing versus something else. So this is government intervention in the economy. So when government intervenes in the economy, how does it do that? It does that through businesses. It does it through trying to manipulate businesses. So what are businesses supposed to do? They're supposed to say, oh, none of our business, government, do whatever you want. No, they are going to have to either fight back to try to protect themselves from it, or they are going to, because many of them don't know what capitalism is and don't know the virtues of capitalism and don't understand it. They, in many ways, they're just like most Americans who vote for this stuff, right? They're going to try to manipulate those controls so that they minimize the hurt on them. And in the worst case scenarios, that they're going to manipulate it so that it hurts their competitors and benefits them.
So anyway, people, I've went on long enough. You get the point. If you want to see the rest of his video, which is really funny and highly entertaining, you can go and check out Paul Joseph Watson's video on capitalism. And it's just so true. It honestly is so true. These people, sadly, depressingly, do not understand what capitalism is. They don't even know what socialism is. And it's just like I say, they're like the dog that chases its own tail round in circles. So, thank you for watching my video, and I shall talk to you later. Cheers.